Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
So in this explainer, we're going to take a look at the hidden architecture of our world, using Kaiser Fung's book, Numbers Rule Your World, as our guide. And it all starts with this question. What could a credit score, a disease outbreak, and a steroid test possibly have in common?
Well, the answer is that they're all run by these invisible systems, these rule books built on statistics. And this is a force that, it shapes our lives in ways we don't even see most of the time. We're not talking about lies, damn lies, and statistics here. This is about what happens when numbers tell a very particular kind of truth, but at a massive, massive scale.
You see, this is what we call statistical governance. And these systems, they're not just sitting on a shelf for analysts to look at. No, they are active. They're out there in the world managing populations, deciding who gets what, making calls about your life. They really are the new rulebook.
And at the very core of every single one of these systems, baked right into the rulebook, is this really tough, calculated trade-off, a choice that institutions have to make.
So every single one of these systems has to juggle two different kinds of mistakes. You've got your false positive, that's when you flag an innocent person. Think of a clean athlete getting accused of doping. Then you have the false negative, that's when you miss a guilty person, letting a real cheater slip through. But here's the kicker, and this is so important. The costs are not equal. If an anti-doping agency makes a false positive, it's a PR nightmare. We're talking lawsuits, headlines, public outrage. It's a huge, visible, toxic cost. But a false negative, when a cheater gets away, nobody ever knows. It's totally invisible. So what do you think the system is designed to avoid? The public, toxic error, of course.
And you can see exactly how this incentive plays out in the real world. Anti-doping labs, terrified of a false positive, they end up being, well, timid. They'd rather let a few cheaters slip by than face the backlash of one wrong accusation. Now flip that. Airport security, they're terrified of the opposite error, a false negative, missing a real threat. So they crank up the sensitivity, which means they accept a ton of false positives. And that's you and me getting pulled aside for extra screening. The main takeaway here is, this isn't a flaw. You can't get rid of both errors. Minimizing one always means you get more of the other. It's a feature, not a bug.
And right here, this is where the system's cold, mathematical logic starts to crash into our own personal human reality. It's where things start to feel, deeply unfair.
Okay, this right here, this is the very heart of our crisis in perception. Now, this table shows something called Simpson's paradox, and it can really bend your brain, so let's work through it. Look at the subgroups. Among high-ability students, both black and white students score a 600, no difference. And among low-ability students, both groups score 400. Again, zero difference when you compare like with like. But then, look at the overall average on the far right. Suddenly, there's a huge 80-point gap. So what gives? How is that even possible? Well, the secret is in the composition of the groups. The group of white students in this example is made up of 60% high-ability students. The group of black students? Only 20% high-ability. So that overall average, that group-level truth, is totally misleading. It's statistically correct, but it tells a story that is completely wrong for every single individual inside those groups.
So, to get a better handle on this clash between the big picture and the individual person, let's try a metaphor.
Imagine these systems are like a traffic control tower for a huge city. Its job is to keep the whole system moving, right? Prevent gridlock, avoid a massive catastrophe. And from that high-level view, it does a great job. It optimizes for the health of the entire network. But from way up there in the tower, it can't see you. It doesn't know you're racing to the hospital or having a personal emergency. All it sees are data points, just cars on a grid. And that's exactly it. That's why a decision that looks perfectly rational and efficient for the group can feel so incredibly unjust and blind when you're the one individual being affected.
Okay, so if these systems can feel so unfair and create all this friction, why are they literally everywhere? Why do we keep using them? Well, this famous quote from the statistician George Box really nails it. These models stick around not because they're perfect. They're not. In fact, they are fundamentally, by definition, wrong. They stick around because they are useful. I mean, think about it. Before credit scores, what did we have? You had a loan officer making a decision based on, what, gut feelings? Personal biases? For all its flaws, a credit score is way, way better than that when you're making millions of decisions. So these systems, imperfect as they are, give us a more reliable and consistent foundation than, well, pretty much any of the alternatives we've come up with.
All right, let's zoom out a bit. Because this one core idea, this logic of managing by probability, it's the thread that connects this huge, sprawling web of systems that basically run our modern lives.
I mean, just think about it. The exact same structure, the trade-offs between errors, the institutional incentives, that constant tug-of-war between the group and the individual, it's running in the background of all these different areas. The logic behind your credit score, it shares the same DNA as the logic that tracks a disease outbreak, or sets your insurance rate, or even decides if your resume gets seen by a human.
So yeah, these are the systems that rule our world. They're impersonal, they're efficient, and a lot of the time they're inequitable. But understanding how they work on the inside, getting a handle on those trade-offs, that view from the tower, that is the absolute first step to being able to see the world they're creating a little more clearly.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.